Masvidal is reconsidering retirement, O'Malley is changing his future plans, and the next opponent for Francis Ngannou is set soon. These are today's topics. My name is Flo. Welcome to the Championship Rounds. Jorge Masvidal has made some interesting statements in recent days. He gave an interview to Low Kick MMA, and as the first BMF was asked about the upcoming fight between Gaethje and Holloway. Like me, a big Holloway fan, he seems to expect Gaethje to win and hopes that a BMF versus BMF fight can take place afterward. Of course, he also makes a confident prediction saying he would probably break his orbital bone. I'm not so sure about that, but he will likely fight again before that. He simply tweeted, "You are dead, Nate Diaz." Considering Helwani wrote in early January that a boxing match between the two is in works, it seems we can expect an upcoming rematch in boxing gloves, which I think is a bad idea for Nate, but that doesn't matter at that point, I guess. Would have been quite a short retirement for Gamebred, that's for sure. Sean O'Malley reconsidered his future plans after some fans clearly expressed their dislike for the Topuria call-out. He recorded a video while jogging, talking about it, and said he would fight Merab and predicted a clean knockout. Whether it was really his fans or a clear message from the UFC that they weren't interested in the fight against Topuria remains a question, but first and foremost he needs to beat Chito Vera, of course. Stylistically, that's a very interesting matchup, I think. I will talk about that more before that fight really happens. Talking about bantamweight, I might just mention Cory Sandhagen's name again before fans forget him. He's in his prime, a technically outstanding fighter, and seems to be overlooked despite his achievements. His split decision loss against TJ Dillashaw was very controversial, and the fight against Petr Yan was also extremely close. Since then, he has stopped Song Yadong, beaten the current challenger 50-45, and wrestled Rob Font near resignation. It definitely hurts him most that O'Malley is fighting number 6 in the rankings next. I also want to mention Ilia Topuria again because I find it so impressive what happens with him at the moment. After entering a collaboration with Real Madrid, the biggest sports club in the world, on Instagram, it was announced that he will present his belt before their upcoming match against FC Sevilla. Even though Sevilla is currently not performing like they used to be, it's still the biggest football match of the country this weekend, and Spain is a football-loving nation. That match takes place in prime time on a Sunday evening. That's just another massive push for Topuria's fame. He also received a brand new Aston Martin from their branch office in Madrid this week as a little gift in addition to his UFC title. Also a nice little gesture. This week, Ilia also told the Spanish broadcaster of Eurosport who he would like to fight next and what his plans are afterward. He said he would prefer his next opponent to be O'Malley, Conor McGregor or Max Holloway, and he would like to have his first title defense by the end of this year. He also talks about aiming for the double champ status and wanting to fight Islam Makhachev after that. Kinda annoying, I think, that so many champions aim for that right away. Feels like a bad trend that doesn't necessarily do the sport any good if you ask me, but Ilia is also talking about his plans to box someday, naming Canelo as a potential opponent. His confidence seems to go through the roof at the moment, but I mean, how could it not? But maybe his next fight will just be a bit closer. He'll then realize that his best fit is at featherweight and he stays in the division. Would be best for both divisions, I think. The question of when Francis Ngannou will return to MMA has also been on many fans' minds for a long time. Given the huge amount of money he's making in boxing at the moment, some speculated that it might not happen anytime soon or perhaps never again. Others said he owes a lot to the PFL, will be loyal and fight for them soon. Now that question seems to be answered, as a PFL trailer makes it clear that the winner of the upcoming weekend, where PFL champions meet Bellator champions, will likely face Francis. So the winner of Renan Ferreira versus Ryan Bader will be the one facing him. This also seems to put an end to those speculations about the boxing match with 4-ounce gloves in the cage against Deontay Wilder. A real shame, that would have been madness. But for now, let's take a quick look at this weekend to end this video. The UFC is of course in Mexico, as every MMA fan probably knows. In this context, the UFC Performance Institute in Mexico City was also opened. I'm sure the atmosphere will be amazing. I mean, to really experience it, of course you have to be there live, but I'm excited to witness what can be transferred through our TVs. That the main and co-main events will be probably exciting is something I don't need to tell any MMA fan. Maybe it's worth mentioning that both will be 5-round fights, but let's look at a few people who might not be known to everyone, and I'll pick out 3. Right at the opener of the card, Muhammad Naimov from Tajikistan is fighting. I find him a very interesting fighter. He fought Jamie Mulaki on a 5 days notice in his debut and stopped him as a featherweight upper weight class. Back in his old weight class, in his second UFC fight, he won a decision against the talented Nathaniel Wood. That guy seems to have potential and is definitely confident about his own skill set. I'm looking forward to his 3rd UFC fight against Eric Silva. Immediately after, we see Felipe dos Santos from Chute Box in Rio for the 2nd time in the UFC. He stepped in on 8 days notice for Kai Kara France against Manel Kape in his UFC debut. Although he lost the decision, he put on a great performance. I mean, dos Santos is 23 years young and Kape is a world-class fighter, but the fight was relatively even and action-packed as hell. In that fight, dos Santos seemed like a guarantee for action. Aggressive Muay Thai, as known from fighters out of his gym like Charles Oliveira, confidently pressures, isn't scared to get hit and comes at his opponents right after. He looked for the ground here and there, which suggests dangerous BJJ. Keep an eye on this young man. And lastly, I'd like to look at the only women's fight on that card. A Mexican woman who's really fun to watch us fighting. Yasmin Jauregui brings a very high level of striking into the cage, works with beautiful straight fast hands, brings dangerous short elbows in the clinch, also pretty aggressive, like Mexican fans love to see. I understand that some fans don't enjoy women's fight as much as good men's fights, but check out Jauregui's UFC debut against Yasmin Lucindo. That was striking at a level not many strawweights in the UFC have. Both names mentioned, Jauregui and Lucindo, should also definitely be kept an eye on by the division. And then there's this PFL versus Bellator event. A very exciting concept if you ask me. It starts pretty much right after the UFC in Saudi Arabia. Impa Kasanganay is back in middleweight against Johnny Ablin after winning the season in light heavyweight. We have Thiago Santos against Joel Romero in light heavyweight. Could also be pretty boring as they are not the youngest anymore, but it could also be a real banger. Clarissa Shields is also back in MMA. Like I said, definitely an exciting card with a cool concept that we can expect every year from now on, Don Davis said a few weeks ago. Elbows will, by the way, be allowed, which hasn't been the case in the PFL in the past. I just hope the pacing of that card is good. Anyways, I wish you all a lot of fun with all those fights. Have a great weekend. Thanks of course for tuning in. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss videos like this in the future. And with that being said, see you next time.